My dad got stationed in Colorado and there was no housing.
Oh, really?
So.
Hey. What's up?
Hi.
What's going on, Robert?
Not much.
Hello.
My kids are focused, so I can get them up when I want.
Oh, my gosh. Not that pretty.
You look sharp. Oh, okay.
All kinds of people come in. Just teasing with you.
That's all.
You're supposed to sign out. Oh,
I live kitty corner to the Tandem, the bar.
Oh.
And they play music, no, we were there first, the RV park was there first. They talk about not liking somebody, they do not like me. They do not like me. And this new fancy thing, Echo Bridge, under Roosevelt, they have music under Echo Bridge. Yes. Okay, well, when you live on, Tandem Bar, it's on Roosevelt, and well, I don't go there. They probably wouldn't let me in. No, I did go on. Roosevelt on the river. On the river. And so it's really nice. They have guns down underneath the bridge, and then the people sit over on the other side of the river at the Tandem area. Right. Well, they have some heavy metal band.
Oh.
So if you live on top of the bridge, the echo and the distortion.
So you're a very compatible. They're happy with you as a neighbor.
No, I'm not happy.
You're so shy and quiet. I just don't understand it.
Well, and I told him, I said, because not in our park, but the park is immediately across the street, but it's a regular trailer park. There's kids over there.
How about the June meeting? Nomination, election.
Because you read the bylaws, and this is what we have to do, and that's okay.
Yes, okay. Check them out, check the previous process, ATAC, and then, so, one of that, that we already have previous votes on there. So, go that route.
Did you sign up?
So,
I don't have a conflict in May, because both co-chairs by the bylaws become ATAC representatives.
We haven't said that in the bylaws, but we could, in our meetings, we said that co-chairs will be ATAC representatives.
Okay, because we talked the other day on the phone about alternate Monday, alternates, and so I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to be discussing today.
So we shouldn't, only alternate right now would be alternate to me, but the other way, the ex-co-chair before we do the other alternate.
I mean, we can discuss, have it on there for both, just because that's
okay. All right, thanks.
Have it on there as the agenda.
Yeah, I see it done before. Okay.
Had it on there for both committees, but
that is action, discussion, appropriate action. Okay. Fair enough.
So we could just decide on the alternate.
Prior conversation, sure that unlike whoever there's stakeholder contact that's representing that part of the stakeholder, but we don't want to have another one that could have a conflict of interest as well. So we just have some discernment about that.
Yeah. I mean,
that makes sense.
Yeah. So, previously we had a little bit of new problems on there, but it's just, it's up to the organization too.
Yeah. What is she?
She was a parks director.
Like most people, actually come out from public works. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's something.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we don't see any issue with it on our side, as long as organization that first representing. Yeah. Hey, let's go. Sure, they're good. We don't have anything. But if that's wants to approach, make a process meeting and talk about just to go through the picture. Picture so you can.
Yes, definitely. I'll also provide the 15.
Yes.
So people can sit down.
Yes, and also, on our second slide, I believe, we're going to remind folks that according to the Open Meetings Act, folks, if they're talking online, their video needs to be shown.
Right.
So that's just another reminder.
It's the same way the city does it in both the,
No, not really.
I don't.
once a week, sometimes twice a week. I had both of those meetings. One's for the amendments, one's for the update.
I just go around and look.
And then, for the meetings.
I do what we normally do, and I just go out and down the top line, so.
City.
We haven't done that yet.
Yeah.
Maybe something we have to look into.
Joey, do you want me to mention this in your roundtable, or?
Yes,
That's what you're getting, roundtable? I mean, what can I mention?
Announcements and future agenda items?
Not that you are,
We're last on the agenda then.
I'm last on, yeah.
We'll keep you out of the bars, Lydia.
Well, I don't go. They play it on too loud, and I'm trying to sleep at 10 o'clock.
And noticed it, but I'm waiting to hear
Rather
back
than,
from
Well, why don't you move so close to a bar?
SAPD.
We're the
They called me
first.
back last night.
That's what I keep telling them.
I'm like, what, oh, all day, like, okay.
Older
and
and
it needs to record.
a big developer.
Yeah.
And so now, like,
You have proper,
That's okay, yeah.
Pardon?
you have proper zoning?
I
Well-
just didn't want to, like, if I just jump up and run out, it's not.
I don't know.
No, yeah.
I haven't looked into that. Thank you very much.
The other
Have
one is,
meetings, so.
Okay, you know.
sure,
So now I'm
they
just,
couldn't be.
and they won't call.
Oh, well, they did that because the process,
Like, the bill left is out of my hand, I'm like constantly watching
Yeah.
it going.
I love living on the river.
No worries.
So what was the property before it came apart?
Long time ago, it was a bowling alley. Then it was closed forever and ever and ever. And then it was opened by this little bar that
Before you
I never stayed. Then it was closed for a long time. Yeah, it's been closed most of the 12 years I've lived there. But, it's okay. They just need to end the outdoor music at 10
I can
o'clock.
see that.
Like the Cove does, like,
Hey, can one of y'all check to see if you can, unmute yourself? Make sure you don't have the same issue the last month.
In the city. And we're under a 90-day where the, development services go with the sound things, and so that's another issue for you.
but I got on that committee, and the problem is that if they decide that the noise is too loud, they're not allowed to issue.
No, they have to call the police.
And on the sound side, there's so much going on. Police don't usually make it until about 3 o'clock.
It's not a perfect solution, but it is an option. And the reason that came about is neighbors complaining about parents backing up in the morning at 4:30. So there was a certain amendment that came out, and that is in effect right now.
Okay.
Noise ordinance, so.
Yeah.
The other one is, what was it, the night light thing, private lights. It's different from the military lighting program. This is another issue that came out of this conversation about having the lights on the adjoining property shining in there. I can't remember what that was called. Good night, or something like that. Work.
Can you hear me?
Drop it
Joey?
off.
Thanks, Jeff.
Speaking of lights,
Hey.
I have a light.
Hey, thanks for testing that out.
Yep.
The RV park thinks that putting lights up against the trail keeps the people away from stealing? No, it just lets them see as they're walking up
What's available?
where there's back in jail. Oh, exactly, yes, and they can plan it. They have a quarter of a mile plan. And you shut their light off, right at the government, they hardwired it.
So where were you ever raised? And to believe that we live in a perfect world, so tell me what happened.
I love where I live.
Yeah, but there are always going to be
There's issues, yes. Yeah. But that was really the hardwire in my life. Yeah.
So you rent it, you don't
Rent it. Oh, yeah, I don't know that.
if you owned it, just not hardwired.
Yeah. No, I wasn't that smart.
Okay. It is 3 o'clock. We're ready to start. Do a roll call.
Yes.
It's 3 o'clock. We're going to call the Active Transportation Advisory Committee to order and start with roll call.
Patricia Franco.
Here.
Lyle Hostetler.
Here.
Carl Brett Miller. Jeff Jordan.
Call the alternate if the primary doesn't answer.
I would typically not.
Cheryl Rogers. Lauren Simsick. Brandon Ross. Shanari Gold. Jessica Brunson. Erica Taft.
Check it here.
Here.
Oh, yeah, she is.
Yuda Capricioso. Allison Hayward.
Here.
Melanie Cochran. Bill Hill.
Allison Haywood.
Bert Pickle. David Benperin.
Here.
Robert Hamley.
Here.
Karen Bishop. J.D. Simpson.
Here.
Darcy Schipple. Maricela Diaz-Wells. Lydia Kelly.
Here.
Deborah Chavon. Ed Burgos Gomez. Chair, we do have a quorum.
It's a quorum.
Monty has an alternate here. It's Santiago. He's on the call.
Thank you.
No.
I love it.
We have 11 here.
11.
Let's go on.
Okay. All right, we have a quorum, so we will proceed on. Do we have any citizens to be heard? Oh, let me back up. Today's meeting was supposed to be chaired by Jessica Brunson, who was not available since I did the last month, and so I'm doing it again this month. That's what I need to say. Okay. But no, any citizens to be heard? Okay. The next item on the agenda is item 3, approval of the March 9th, 2022 Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Do I have any changes or modifications? If not, we'll entertain a motion in a second.
This is Lyle, I move to approve.
Okay, I have a motion by J.D. and a second by David. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Same sign, negative? Okay, the meeting minute approval passes. Item 4 is a discussion and appropriate action on the selection of an alternate TAC representatives from the ATAC. Joey?
All right, so at the last meeting, we can go to the next one. The next one. All right, so at the last meeting, the committee had discussed, at the last meeting, the ATAC had discussed, selecting Robert Hanley, Jessica Brunson, who are the co-chairs of ATAC. And they have discussed having them serve on the Mpo Technical Advisory Committee as representatives. So, probably going forward, we'll have the co-chairs serving as the party members on TAC, representing ATAC. And so at today's meeting, we'll be discussing the alternate to serve for the co-chairs who are serving on TAC as well. So, since the March 9th meeting, Patricia Franco had notified us that she'd like to serve as the alternate for Robert. And Patricia, if that's still okay, entertain that on the floor here soon. Also, we would like to accept any other nominations just to be a alternate serving for ATAC on the Technical Advisory Committee. So,
Questions? Sorry, any questions?
Does anybody have any questions about this? So essentially, long story short, we're just looking for an alternate to serve for the co-chairs who are serving on the MPO's Technical Advisory Committee. As of right now, Patricia Franco is requesting to serve as the alternate for Robert, and we're looking for alternate to serve for the bicycle or Mpo Mobility co-chair.
So Joey, what this means is that technically at all TAC meetings, Robert and Jessica would show up.
Yes.
And then if Robert was unavailable, then
Yes.
if elected, Patricia would. And so we're looking for
Yes.
Jessica, so there would always be two.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and let me just clarify too, so since what Robert had started off with at the start of the meeting, Jessica, she will not be able to serve as ATAC co-chair, so we'll have to discuss that at a later June meeting. But for the meantime, we are looking to confirm the alternates for the ATAC members serving on TAC.
So for all practical purposes, Joey, if this ATAC committee members agree for Patricia Franco to be the alternate, that's what we can do today. But not knowing the other co-chair, because it hadn't been posted for the committee to elect, and that won't happen till June.
Correct.
Then we'll select the other alternate at that time.
But yeah, I could select them too today, or the alternates.
All right.
But would the alternate still be eligible for the co-chair position?
It could, so essentially that could be in place, yes. Because there'll be a TAC meeting in April, so essentially that person could serve in that capacity until we find the co-chair for that position. Sorry, I hope that makes sense. A little last-minute technical changes we had to make, but.
So if I was interested in, I was wanting to be considered for the position before.
Co-chair, correct.
For co-chair. If I threw my hat back into the ring for the co-chair, I should not throw my hat in the ring for the TAC.
It doesn't.
Or it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Or at this point.
Or it doesn't hurt to know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's why I was curious, as to I was going, should we wait to get the other, co-chair alternate and do that in June at the same time?
Right.
It's just because that is possible, what you're saying, JD. It's just kind of going by our bylaws, we couldn't add on the co-chair election today because that was after we had already released the package and the agenda. But, you know, right now we can have an alternate serve for TAC. And then if you wanted to, you could, say if you did want to be the co-chair representing the bike and Mpo Mobility sub, you could. So that wouldn't hurt. There's nothing in our bylaws that say that would hurt you in that situation.
Okay.
For all practical purposes, if the ATAC committee approves Patricia Franco for the alternate to myself at the TAC, we're covered for the next month or two. Yes, it's the first Friday of the month, so we're covered for May, and we'll be covered for June.
Correct.
Between the two of us, we should be able to cover that.
Yes.
So, okay.
Okay.
So the action today. You okay?
Yeah.
So the action today is to select the alternate to the Technical Advisory Committee of the MPO for my co-chair position.
And Patricia, are you still interested in being an alternate for Roberts?
Yes, I am. I currently, in my capacity at VIA, I attend all TAC meetings and TPB meetings because I write the, I think it's called like the board memo that channels upward so that we properly inform our board of what actions are coming their way if it's transit related. So this would simply, it would go nicely because I already attend all the meetings.
Patricia, one of the things is we had a little logistical issue with Jessica on the conflict of interest, realizing that on the ATAC you represent the Advanced Transportation District, but on TAC you're representing the Active Transportation Advisory Committee. So as long as you realize that in your position as VIA, that's not who you're representing on TAC. Is that understood?
Yes, that's understood. I remember hearing that point brought up by Darcy at our last meeting, and I agree with that.
Okay. Well,
If there's no other persons,
if I have no other nominees, then we'll close the nominations and vote on Patricia being the alternate to the MPO's Technical Advisory Committee. And I'll entertain a motion.
I give a motion to accept Patricia Franco
Okay,
as the alternate for TAC.
okay. I have a motion from J.D. Simpson, and do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. And I have a second from Bill Hill. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same sign for no? Okay, motion carries. And so until we get to the June meeting, we get additional co-chair. I'm the primary at TAC, and since Patricia's always at the meetings anyway, she'll be the alternate in case I don't show up until we get that other co-chair. Okay.
do you still want to entertain the bicycles alternates for now? Just so we have a representative, that second representative on TAC, because these will be separate positions. Patricia will be the alternate for you, and then the other position will need an alternate.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, JP. Since it was between you and Jessica for the other co-chair.
And Carl. Carl was also.
Yeah, but Carl was just between the two. She's interested in the co-chair, but if she is not selected as a co-chair, I think you'd be interested in the alternate position.
Correct.
Okay. That's why I was wondering if we shouldn't postpone that until June. That's my thought, but the committee's everybody's got their own opinion.
Okay. I can do that. As long as representation from ATAC, that's fine. If you want to just wait till June.
Yeah, I think that would be the preferable thing, Joe.
Okay.
And I also want to make sure that in our conversation on Monday, that we're not doing anything that's not in accordance with the bylaws and we violate any provision of process and procedure.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
We can
Okay.
take care of that in June.
All right. Next item on the agenda is item 5, presentation on the 2021 TxDOT SAT bike hearing.
Yes.
I got it.
Is Darcy, are you present online?
She didn't respond when you did roll call.
Which organization were you looking for? I'm sorry.
So I saw her name on there, and then I saw something in the chat that she's here.
You see it there? Maybe she's on mute.
Yeah, let's see, here's the look. Darcy should be on. So if not, we'll table this.
Maybe not.
Yeah, if we see Darcy come on, we'll go back to her
Okay.
agenda item.
Okay. Agenda item 5 is tabled at this time. Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is a presentation of the Alamo area MPO active transportation resources and past active transportation studies. Joey, that's you again.
So you're going to hear from me a lot today again. So going back, this presentation, or let me make sure, just 1 second, make sure that we're, okay, perfect, okay. All right. Okay, so a little background on this. At the past meetings for ATAC, there's some conversation about just requesting more information about the active transportation program, and also some things that the MPO has done in the past in terms of plans and studies. So this is going to be a presentation going over just that, the active transportation program and some of our recent plans and studies that are relevant to what ATAC is focusing on. So as I mentioned, the overview of the active transportation program, relevant plans and studies, and some next focus areas for the active transportation program. So I think we may have talked about this at the first ATAC meeting back in February, but just a refresher, the active transportation program is in support of a multimodal transportation system. The Alamo area MPO has developed this and has had this program around for a while now. And so the program recognizes the need to plan for everyone in all modes of travel, whether young or old, motorist or bicyclist, walker, or wheelchair user, or transit rider. So some of the goals of the program is to serve as a two-way communication forum. So that's where places like ATAC comes into place and having, all these different groups together here. Of course, talk about, educating residents and public officials through our programs at the MPO, why bicycling and walking are viable modes of transportation and very important for users. And of course, help the community to identify infrastructure improvements that will encourage walking and cycling. So some of the core elements of the active transportation program at the MPO includes our street skills classes, our bicycle and walking safety classes, school and event bike rodeos, our walkable community workshops, the National Bike Month, and National Pedestrian Safety Month. So our first topic here, the street skills classes. Some of y'all may have been to some of our street skills classes, may have hosted a class in your community. We host these classes all throughout the MPO study area. And the main elements of this class, it's about really helping folks feel comfortable when riding a bike on the street. So help getting folks feel more road ready. It's a classroom style course, just a 1-day, 1-hour session. So we help new and returning bicycle riders feel more comfortable, talk about, different aspects of bike commuting. And then, of course, one important element is focusing on the rules and laws pertaining to cyclists. And so some cool elements of this is that participants also receive a free bike helmet and a free bike light set. And we also pass out bike masks and other safety materials. And backtrack over here real quick. So I teach these, or typically teach these for the public-facing classes. We also have a class through our Alamo Commutes program where we can take street skills classes to employers. Say if you know somebody who works, who has a business, we can take the street skills class to that business and teach a class and pass out those free helmets and lights as part of the class. The next one is our walkable community workshop. So think of this as a kind of a neighborhood level planning session So we do essentially a walkability and bikeability audit. So we, assess how improvements can be made to infrastructure in the area. And also we bring together those partner agencies in the area. So our most recent one was held in New Braunfels, or downtown New Braunfels. So we partnered with, the local city departments, different folks, different businesses nearby in those cases. So make sure it's, different folks involved, not just, government agencies who get citizens involved, whether it's a public meeting, or in some cases we go out and meet the folks where they're at. So maybe it's setting up a table at an event in their community, things of that nature. And we also produce a report at the end that essentially highlights what the walking and biking audits assesses. So we put a list of all the different things that can be improved. We list different elements that can be used to make those improvements in this walkability workshop report. And anything else, so like these are official MPO plans. So say if somebody applies for MPO funding, later on there is a few extra points in that scoring process if there's a plan in your area, if there has been a plan conducted or performed in your area. So one of the things we've been talking about the past few months too is National Bike Month. A precursor to this was our walk and roll rallies. We held those for many years prior to when we were focusing on Bike Month, starting in 2018. But prior to that, as I mentioned, we have some other cool events. But since 2018, May has been a focus of Bike Month. And so it's about, showcasing the many benefits of cycling and encouraging folks to give it a try. It's a nationally held event, and so the League of American Bicyclists, they put out a lot of marketing materials, et cetera, for this. But locally, we're pushing this information out, trying to get folks involved and engaged in hosting events in their community. And so we do this through events such as Bike to Work Day. We have programs such as the Bike Month Challenge, so logging your events or your trips in Alamo commutes. And doing that, I'll talk about that later in my other presentation. There's also the Right of Silence. It's in memoriam of cyclists who either been killed in a crash or those who have been fatally injured, seriously injured. And there's also Bike and Roll to School Day, and also, of course, street skills classes. So a newer focus month is National Pedestrian Safety Month. So this takes place in the month of October. I say it's newer because it was recently designated by NHTSA and the FHWA as National Pedestrian Safety Month. Previously, Walk to School Day took place in the month of October, and so the MPO has taken part in different events, such as Walk to School Day. We were looking to expand those efforts, but then the pandemic hit, so we're looking to take a greater focus on this in the future. As things are getting more back to normal. And of course, ATAC. So the place that you're at today, the meeting you're at today, ATAC, so know a little bit about this. It's a forum for y'all to get together. We're an advisory committee for the MPO, so elements of bike and pedestrian concerns. The committee provides, is an advisory committee for those elements to the MPO's technical advisory committee and our transportation policy board. And it's also, a place to talk about, user experience and different elements like that, bike and pedestrian safety, things of those natures. So some other relevant information I won't spend too much time on, but some other cool things we have that can be found on our website and some other resources. We have our info crash stats. This is a tool you can find on our website. You can adjust the filters. If you look, it's the image on the top, and you can adjust the filters. And so say if you want to see if crashes, look for crashes that happen at night, you can adjust those filters. If you want to see crashes involving just pedestrians, you can adjust those filters to see that information. I think it's an interesting tool to just assess when crashes happen, different factors involving that, things of that nature. We also have our IMAP. It's our online mapping tool that has a whole bunch of different layers. Things like our current plans, our long-range and short-range plans, to crash data. We also have local bike infrastructure. We'd love to maybe update with sidewalk infrastructure in the future, but we have like, bike infrastructure, trails infrastructure, things of that nature. We rely on a lot of that data from our partners, so if you have updated data, please send it to us, and we'll get that updated on our IMAP. You may have heard before about the Alamo Commutes program. So that's another program within the MPO. It's a program that encourages commuters to make smart multimodal transportation choices. So, for instance, if you're used to maybe driving yourself to work in your car, maybe we can help you find an option to take the bus, carpool, bike to work, things of that nature. And also, of course, we have transportation funding. So Mpo is the source of federal transportation funding in our region, and you'll be hearing more about that in the coming months and years about those opportunities. So next section is focusing on relevant active transportation plans and studies. I'm going back to 2012 because that's when we had our pedestrian safety action plans, something I know that Robert talks about quite often. And we also, in January 2016, we adopted the Alamo area MPO regional bicycle and pedestrian planning study. And then November 2018, we had the Alamo area bike share master plan. And there's also the Capital Alamo connection study adopted in February 2019. And then June 2021, we adopted the Brussels transit study. So focusing on obviously some plans that heavily focus on active transportation and and at least one or two that, touch on different elements and, things like transit as well. So I'll just run through these. We'll also have these presentations available on our website, but I'll try to give you some highlights on some of these elements. So the mission is conducted in 2012. It defined a set of actions to encourage walking and make it safer. At the time, it was the San Antonio-Bexar County MPO, so that's before the MPO expanded its study area. But there's still a lot of relevant information in there focusing on infrastructure recommendations, sample corridor improvements, sample neighborhood improvements, land use, zoning, and site design issues, and implementation strategies and priorities. The next one is the Alamo Area Regional Bicycle and Pedestrian Planning Study. This assesses current bicycle and pedestrian conditions in the cities of Boerne, New Braunfels, and Seguin, and make recommendations regarding future facilities necessary to create comprehensive active transportation networks. Work specific to Bexar County and the city of San Antonio included the development of the pedestrian master plan. And then more detailed connectivity work had also been conducted with the San Antonio Missions National Historic Park and the surrounding neighborhood. So this goes into depth into those various areas. And there's also a infrastructure toolbox as part of this too. So, highlighting the different elements and infrastructure improvements that we made. So the next one is the Alamo Area Bike Share Master Plan. So it's looking at opportunities to expand the existing system in San Antonio and to include Boerne, New Braunfels, and Seguin. So it's produced in 4 different reports, one for each of the communities. For Bexar County, it represented the background and history of the existing bike share program, a local bicycle system. It explores San Antonio's, at the time, was the new dockless pilot program, which during the middle of the study, if I understand correctly, that's when essentially the scooters exploded in use and availability in our community. So it provides some opportunities and obviously challenges for things like docked bike share programs. And also that same report for the city of San Antonio presented results of its independent analysis. And then for the smaller communities that do not have a current bike share system or shared mobility, there's a feasibility assessment that was performed, and so it included information like the image on the bottom right, and that showed assessments where, say if there was a docked bike share system, where would be good locations for those stations in the community. And then the next one is the Capital Alamo Connection Study. This was a joint partnership through TxDOT, the Alamo Area MPO, and the Capital Area MPO, which is the Austin Area MPO. So it's a larger study focusing on enhancing mobility throughout the greater San Antonio and Austin region. But I wanted to include this as well because there was some elements that were talking about regional bike ped connectivity. So you see this one map here on the bottom right. That's where some of the results from that workshop. I think it's interesting looking at as places like the Great Springs Project released their recent plan for their system. It kind of connects with that regional vision. So I thought that was interesting to include in this presentation as well, even though it doesn't exactly focus on bike ped elements exactly. And so for the last one to be mentioned here today is the Braunfels Transit Study. So this is a recent study. It's an interesting topic to look at, especially as, we talk about transit here and there. So it's looking at providing transit in the city of New Braunfels and also possibly providing connectivity to San Antonio, Seguin, Sharks-Below, and current proposed park and carpool facilities. So taking an analysis of that and hopefully created a good roadmap so that there could be fixed line transit service in New Braunfels and other connection opportunities in the surrounding area. So some other updates or some other upcoming studies I think would be of interest to ATAC. Wanted to mention there's a curb management study. I think we'll be releasing the RFPs for both of these soon. So essentially, the curb management study is going to conduct a study on the continuing uses of curb space in the planning area, including recommendations to on curb management policies. So while this will look at things like, freight management, so like we all know that like e-commerce has really grown, especially in the past couple of years. So there's things like, delivery trucks from FedEx, UPS, Amazon, et cetera. There's things like that you'll consider, but of course, curb space is also shared by pedestrian and bicycle users, and other active transportation users as well. So I think this will be an interesting study to keep a lookout for and get involved in, especially as curb space is where a lot of active transportation use takes place. And then not exactly pertaining to active transportation, but I think the resiliency study will be interesting to look at as well and keep track of. So this will assist with planning and developing a transportation system that can accommodate long-term change and recovery from unpredictable changes, such as extreme weather events or human-made disruptions. So I want to put this in here too, considering that, especially when you're walking or biking around the areas, sometimes extreme weather events can have significant impacts on active transportation infrastructure. So whether it's, ponding in streets or other elements, or maybe a trail gets wiped out by a flood. So I think that's interesting to look at as well, especially as, weather events continue to change over time. All right, so some things we want to highlight what we're working on or what's on our radar in the next coming years, or like next coming months or years. So we'll be releasing more information about our Mpo Mobility 2050. So this is a document, so this is information talking about our Metropolitan Transportation Plan 2050. So that's our long-range transportation plan. Also our Transportation Improvement Program, that's our short-range plan, and our Transportation Conformity Document, which is part of our conformity for air quality in our region. So we're going to be having public meetings through April and May throughout the community. So I think at least 4 meetings throughout our study area. We'll also be collecting public inputs in person and online. And so we'll be definitely looking for that information. We're able to present on that today, but we'll be sharing that information with y'all via email. Of course, as I mentioned, May is National Bike Month. We'll be talking about that shortly as well. And October, as I mentioned before, is National Pedestrian Safety Month. So obviously National Bike Month is coming up in May, but we have some time to plan for October and National Pedestrian Safety Month. Know that there's both those months are especially important as we've seen, the rise in crashes involving cyclists and pedestrians. So I think those are both especially important months to highlight and focus on. And then throughout the summer through spring 2023, the Mpo, we're working with the FHWA on the focused approach to safety program. So we were highlighted as an area that had a lot of pedestrian crashes. So we're doing some work with the FHWA, the Federal Highways Administration, and doing some work with them to assess how we can have a game plan to hopefully improve that. And some of that will involve working with some of y'all and some of your agencies and other programs, and hopefully sharing this knowledge and information with y'all through the FHWA Focused Approach to Safety program. So I know that was a lot of information. Try to wrap that up as quickly as I could, or try to wrap this all up in a short presentation, at least provide a good overview in terms of what we're doing, some of the things we've done in the past. And if you have any questions, we'd love to hear it. Or comments. Yes, Lydia.
I always have questions. On the joint capital plan that you talked about, I think you mentioned it, but is that 100-mile trail in that plan?
No, so that took place that was adopted back in, I think, 2018, 2019. So that was before the Great Springs project, before their plan was released. But I'm not sure if talks are taking place around that same time. But maybe David can answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that a little bit. The Great Springs projects just released the final trails plan on Monday. That might be getting folded in with long-range plans here at the Mpo, but in terms of editing any of the documents that Joey prepared today, those are finalized documents.
So, when was Great Springs project founded?
It was in 2019, but it wasn't not quite in time to get.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you.
Joey, is there anything in policy or procedure here at the Alamo Mpo or bylaws that tells you what you do with the plans, how often they're updated, i.e. the pedestrian safety action plan is over 12 years old now, and what happens though? There's nice to do studies, but where does that information go, and does it need to be revisited? And whose decision is it?
Yeah, so I think we don't have anything in our bylaws talking about that at the moment in terms of how often we revisit those. A lot of our plans and studies, a lot of them are produced to help, the things that we're talking about here at ATAC, a lot of those plans and studies are produced to help our agency partners with their own plans and implementing a lot of those ideas into their current framework. Because as you know, the Mpo, we produce a lot of plans and studies. It's great forums to talk about these here. We work together with a lot of our partners to help implement those ideas. So that's where some of that comes into place, maybe working with our partners to see, where we're making progress on different elements. We don't have anything, providing exact guidance on looking at those documents. But I know that taking another visit at the regional bike ped study, that's, one of the things that I revisited was the pedestrian, I took another look at the pedestrian focus and having a pedestrian plan in place. But that was a while ago too. That was 2016 that the regional bike ped study took place. And obviously things have changed since then. Infrastructure concepts and different ideas have changed as well, and different policies have changed. But at this moment, we don't have anything in place to provide guidance on that.
All right, thank you.
So, this is Bill Hill. I'm a fairly new member, so I'm trying to figure my way out about what you do and don't do in the ATAC. But to piggyback off of Robert's point, and I'm also the city manager at Shepherd Park, plans are developed or assessments made, and they're pretty good right then and at that time. And then for the most part, they get put on a shelf unless somebody is actively looking at them. Nothing really ever happens, except for those areas which was already happening or something happened, whatever. But like in the city of Shepherd Park, I've come across a 1999 master plan, and then there's a 2010 town plan, and then since I've been there, we updated it to 2018. However, I guess my point is, I go back to the 2000, to the 1999 plan constantly. And it is amazing how much is still relevant. But since, nobody is around that produced it, and there have been some changes that have been made, a lot of things have been accomplished. It just happened to be a very good document. And I think to Robert's point is, maybe there ought to be someone looking at parts of it and saying, okay, what part is relevant, let's bring a piece to it. What can we improve, and it kind of leads into, you don't have to wait till the next plan is done, but you ought to look at and be familiar with the plans that exist, and then what is the low-hanging fruit? What's still there that is fairly easy to do, what can we influence? Because, that's the other thing. What is the ATAC? What are the Mpo? What can they influence? And so, I guess I got a follow-up question to Joey. You said your partners, are you talking about VIA and who are the other partners that?
So essentially anybody who's like governmental agency or region like Chapter Park, VIA, like anybody who's sitting at the table essentially, like governmental agencies who are implementing these ideas, community organizations who are helping, pushing those goals and visions as well. But essentially, we realize too that I guess maybe a response to this comment too is like a big thing, especially MPOs and like the federal governments and especially FHWA is like looking at performance measures. So essentially you're measuring your success. And so that's one way we maybe can take a look at some of these plans and see where we're at. We've had some efforts in the past to see, like what type of bike infrastructure has been implemented. That's something easy to track. We know that a lot of governmental agencies have that data, looking at fine-grained what type of infrastructure it is, because we all know there's different types of bike lanes, there's different types of sidewalks that feel comfortable or not. I think that's maybe one start to that is taking a better assessment of that, because we do track things like crash information. We have easy accessibility to that, and we'll take more effort to partner with our partner organizations to get a steady stream of data. We talked about that in the past, to make sure that we have a steady stream of data on their infrastructure, and making sure like we're all aligned in terms of what we're categorizing as. So if what you consider a bike lane, is that considered a bike lane in San Antonio or something? Like, is it, or is it, protected bike lane? What differentiates different types of infrastructure? But, part of that I realize, I guess, from that perspective is that, from any other community, part of that for sure is like, political will. In terms of implementing some of these ideas, but also maybe carrying some of these ideas forward. There's different approaches to this.
Bottom line, it sounds like, Bill, how does this organization, the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, be part of a resource to anything? And I think Jacob Nolan is ready to review the bicycle management plan. Have you retained a consultant yet?
Jacob Shore. Jacob Shore with the
See, they're going to do it.
The big daddy rabbit, right?
Yeah, and so they're basically, this is a 2.5 year process for their document. And the question is, with the bicycle interests that we have on this committee and part of the MPO, is I don't know if there's going to be any subcommittees with a consultant or not, but then we are a resource. We have some plans here that the consultant can have, but how do we become a resource to events, Bill, occurring, initiatives, and stuff like that? That's one thing I think would be very important for us to say, hey, we have a knowledge base and we have some resources. How do we help the city with their consultant on the new bicycle action plan? Those kind of things. It's kind of like we're doing a new pedestrian safety. I remember when we first did the pedestrian safety action plan, and if you'll notice that there are two consultants on most of these reports, Alamo Tool Design and Tool Design did the template for the pedestrian safety action plan for the Federal Highway Administration, and we were lucky and blessed to get them. They have an expertise and a knowledge base in there, and the question is what do we do with this knowledge? What do we do with this information? And I think that's the point. I wish, I tell you, as an architect and being on the planning commission, I've sat on so many design charrettes in this city that, like you said, they just sit on it. And so it's always at the start of the design charrettes, they go, we want something implementable, but it still gets put on the bookshelf. And I think with the tools that we have here, how do we use those tools in any initiatives that are coming forth with the future? And that would be my answer.
When the projects though go to the policy board, they get scored, right?
Yes.
Do you still do that, or did that
Yes.
change?
That is still a huge part of our process.
So it's scored. So if you have a project that you see in one of your documents that, studies, and you bring it forward, then if it's already in a plan, it would get an increase in points.
Exactly.
Be in front of somebody that comes with something that isn't in any plan, it's just, they've just decided to do it. So on that note, I mean, like, if you're, even your 1999 plan, if you come up with a project and somebody else that has never had it in their study, the only problem is the policy board can take the recommendations of the, what do we call it? ATAC. Can take the ATAC recommendations, and they don't have to go with them.
But I
They
think
usually do.
Yeah, I'm a little bit familiar because we competed for, with Texas improvement project for Northwest Military Highway. So we went through that whole drill for that. But, I'm not looking for my city, I'm looking at broader. You have Bureau County, and you have New Braunfels and Seguin, and you got big cities, San Antonio, and you got big organizations, and they have staff that does all this stuff.
yes.
And you got VIA that they have a piece to it, and then there's probably a lot of the smaller organizations. So there's some cities are just, I'm gonna put sidewalks in, or I'm gonna put a bike lane, and they just do it themselves. And then there are regional studies. And then there's the annual, or maybe every 2 years, there's a data call for projects, and people that think they have a good project, they try to compete for funding, and that goes through a process. I kind of got that, but just this organization, besides providing guidance, I mean, are they part of the scoring process for
Yes.
things? Okay.
But this organization,
that.
that's done at the technical advisory committee level.
Well, we are part of that, like, ACE.
We have 2 representatives, right?
Yes, but I guess going back to that point though too, it's like, I've been here for close to 4 years now, but I've been a part of one scoring process, and with that process, we had a working group from, at the time, was BMAC and TMAC, and that working group was able to talk about, what's the scoring of, what does that scoring sheet look like essentially? So that we really that group focused on those elements, especially for the projects, because there's a pot of money, the transportation alternatives funding focused just on actual transportation projects. So this group specifically focused on that, how it can be approved, but that is that's one area of focus, but there are, there's larger pots of money too, where that, theoretically that scoring process could be refined. And, that's one element where, regional transportation entities like an MPO can have, I guess, a greater emphasis on if, like, say, a planner study, is it following that planner study? Are these types of infrastructure being implemented, things of that nature? So there are some elements where that's where the MPO can really make a difference in terms of, like, the technical scoring process for projects, because there are so many projects that are submitted, and we do fund so many projects. So that is one element. But there are other areas too where the committee could talk about what other ways. So they, like I mentioned earlier, just taking better track of the projects in the area, what's being implemented. I think that's one better way to track or measure, track where we're at, just to see where we're at in terms of what type of infrastructure are we building in our region. And there's other elements like the scoring process, which MPO has direct, focus on. those are a couple areas,
If we could say, okay, out of the, 2012 pedestrian safety action plan, only 20% of it was done, and we briefed that to the NPO, that might be something, oh, wow, only 20%. Maybe they know that, maybe they don't. And then he said, okay, the 2016, this thing's done. And then you throw, I mean, I look at the paper every day, and every other day, there is a pedestrian or a bicyclist killed.
Yeah.
It's just Sunday there was some, prominent bicyclist that was killed on Salado Creek. I mean, these are just from a couple weeks.
yes.
And, if there was a data that was agreed to these people within the NPO, like, if we had to invest more in pedestrian and bike. Although I understand the mobility of vehicles on the roads is a problem in San Antonio, and everyone complains about that,
But there, I mean, I think there's other ways to just talk about these things too, because, like, I mean, there's just other ways that we can make infrastructure safer in general for our most vulnerable road users, which are active transportation users. So there's conversations around that, which these plans and studies, if you take a deeper dive into these plans and studies, some of them are like 75 pages, some of them are like 300 pages long or something. They do dive into those areas of where infrastructure can be improved to truly be safer for pedestrians and cyclists and other active transportation users and prioritize their safety.
And some cities are okay with having streets that are, the grade is C or D, because they know then that the pedestrians and the people on bicycles will be safer. However, in the time that I've been in San Antonio, back in San Antonio, which is 2005, I have not seen that. The minute the city hears that you're going to degrade a street down to C or D, that it's for motorists, they don't like that. And it's like hitting your head against the wall after a few years sometimes, for the way you think.
Also,
Oh, man, it's always been a challenge, but, no, I don't know, we've been doing this for so long, and that's what makes it frustrating. I know we talked about this before the meeting started, but, every forum I'm at, I'm always sharing information from this and others to get people aware of it. As far as the planning, I don't know, what the overall benefit is if we can't put things in action.
You know, one of the things is, I think Bill's made a good point, it's, if we can go look at some of these things we've done in the past, and there's not been really much movement on it, it gives us ammunition to say, let's update this plan. Why? And go back to the Transportation Policy Board and ask the question. Because when we were redoing the Technical Advisory Committee bylaws, when we had PMAC and BMAC, we were advisory committee to Technical Advisory Committee, and we were worried to never go to a Technical Advisory Committee. It's very engineering oriented, is to make sure that we had a voice. So we got the Transportation Policy Board to say, we do not, as a committee, if we don't agree with something TAC has said about a recommendation, we can go straight to the Transportation Policy Board. So we're making little steps. When we put out the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, there was a lot of people that were unaware of it. So at a particular time, you were still here when Allie came in, we were sending it to county commissioners, to city council members, and one of the people that really latched onto it and wanted to know it was Councilwoman Shirley Gonzalez. And she was on the BMAC, I think, for a while, and she really said, thank you, I want to understand that. And I'd like to think some of the things that happened with the Z crossings on Flavor Road was a byproduct of the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan and her leadership in that. So, Bert's correct, we're making little steps, Bill, but, you know, I think for all the years that Bert's been here, and I got here in June of 2010, we're still hoping to continue that.
I think we should, you mentioned earlier on about those studies on that, you have two people with experience. But I think we should offer all the time people with credibility. The challenge we have in the city, no offense to the city or the county, those offices change. Those people change. What's the continuity? What's the
Right.
continuity now? So I really,
So, Bill, it moves slowly, but it has moved, and it, you know, coming from the private sector, where things go like this, and it doesn't quite go like that with governmental entities, but you are aware of that, you've been in the industry. But I haven't been discouraged. I mean, what's 12 years I've been in it? I'm still here trying to continue to move the ball forward.
Make sure to see if anybody online has any comments.
Do I have any comments from anybody that's online?
Questions?
Or questions? Hello?
So if not, I think, so a couple things I'm hearing too, is a couple approaches is things that we can work on, especially as MPO staff, to, you know, look at some assessments of, look at some assessments to see where we're at, and maybe some, you know, infrastructure updates. And I'm seeing maybe revising ATAC. So I was looking at some other MPOs, and there, for instance, the NCP COG in Dallas-Fort Worth area, they have a project update portion where like there's just like some brief updates on projects in their area, maybe of regional significance. Maybe just you know, like maybe 10 minutes, just like a couple minutes of like, okay, we're at this part of this project, we've completed this project, added X amount of miles of, you know, trails. So maybe that's something we can add in too, just like a, you know, the start of the meeting, provide those interesting updates about projects for one aspect, but do a better job of tracking this information as well to start. Or maybe we can also have a future discussion, more strategic discussion about what we can do about this. Another meeting maybe soon.
I think Bert brought up a good point to pull up a Bill's comment that as ATAC, maybe we should take the lead on doing these updates, because as the, you know, the political changes that happen, that as an organization, I know you know, we change over as well, but ATAC as an entity should have something set out, like you said, like a consistent review of these projects.
Yeah.
So that's an ongoing thing, so it doesn't really matter who is over here, we're calling it forward, and because if we don't track it, nobody else is tracking it.
Yeah.
Right?
And
So I think those are very good points to make, that maybe we could build that into our structure so that there's some follow-up and follow-through
yes.
and review of this.
you brought up a good point about how, you know, District 5 filling is off. She's not there now.
Right.
We may have those in, or we have somebody different with a different vote.
Right.
The council has to be, in any city, the council has to be on board, and until voters vote people in who want safe roads for pedestrians and bicycles, unfortunately, we're fighting an uphill battle, but we're still in the fight.
And I think one of those things too I'm hearing is just that, like, the data, like, aggregating some of this information, like data and education, I'm sure a lot of us realize that, you know, just opening our minds to just different things, like different types of infrastructure that are truly, for instance, like for cyclists, that truly accommodate, you know, make it easier to cycle. One of my favorite things is, does a cyclist, or does a person in the car have to press the buttons across the street?
Right.
Things like that. So, like, how can maybe we help you to give you more information to provide those materials to individuals, whether it be governmental agencies, et cetera, whether it's, in this case, we can definitely help with data, like crash data or other information. We can maybe put, like, modified briefings on some of our plans and studies. So maybe we can help out with that.
I don't want to keep this going, but one thing I found in my role was walking in the Mayor's Fitness Council. I've gone through 3 mayors now. And getting back to that credibility point, this is the thing you might have some challenges with. I deal with community. I can get community involved in this. So I don't know how sound this entity is, but when we have these incidents and others involved, we get community behind them.
Is there any other questions or discussions from anybody online before I go back to the people here? Okay, JD?
No, it's just, Darcy's online.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna tell you that, I saw that.
Agreed. Don't want to spend too much time. One recommendation, Joey, you showed the portal for crash data.
Yes.
Has there been any effort to overlay that crash data with ongoing roadway projects? So looking at the major funded projects either by TxDOT, the MPO, or the city, or any city in the region, and overlaying that with known pedestrian or cyclist crash-heavy areas, that could be a really great way to show whether or not the projects that we're investing in are actually improving the scenario.
Yes, and we don't have a map that specifically focuses on that, but our iMap, you can overlay the crash locations with the projects we funded. Those are just projects we funded. We can maybe do another analysis with that, but that is, one aspect too.
You mean a follow-up, like after the infrastructure improvements, a year or two or three, and compare it to the pre-infrastructure improvements to the post? Yes.
We can make that assessment too, and that's talking about our project scoring too, and crashes. That is a huge element that we take into account for scoring projects, is looking at where crashes happen and can we take a better safety approach to those areas. And I guess just to wrap up here too, thinking that is one beauty of the MPO. One beauty of the MPO is that aggregating all this information and data. So I was looking at the Great Springs project. I was briefly looking at their recent plan the plan they recently released, and they've done a lot of legwork in terms of looking at a lot of plans and infrastructure improvements at the routes from San Antonio to Austin, essentially. So aggregating that information into one source helps provide a better picture, because as we all know, San Antonio, then there's a bunch of small suburban cities in between. Then you go up the corridors and head out to New Braunfels, Seguin, Bernie, and there's just a bunch of smaller places in between. So that is where the beauty of the MPO comes in, aggregating that information and data, because you may cross the governmental boundary line, but there's not a boundary line right there in front of you. You're just driving down the street and seeing a sign. But I just want to add that other aspect to it.
Okay.
And Darcy did recommend.
Show up, so we go back to agenda item 5.
And Darcy recommended reviewing the transportation alternative projects. She may be referring to the previous ones we funded, so that's something to talk about as well. But
you have to turn over the screen to Darcy.
Yes. Darcy, are you able to share your screen for the presentation?
I can do it. I think I can do it.
We can barely hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes, much better.
Okay. Gonna check my volume here really fast and make sure. I'm always afraid to mess with my volume.
Okay, we can hear you much better now.
Yes.
Okay.
And if we have too much of a problem here, Darcy, we'll mark it down.
Just let me know. All right. So we did a survey back in June of 2021, and it seems like every time I was going to give this presentation, I had a conflict. So here we are. We're almost ready to do another one. But in June of 2021, TxDOT held its first virtual public hearing for bicycle projects, which included a survey opportunity. And I'm going to discuss that over the next couple of slides. So just the purpose for developing this survey went hand in hand with the requirement to provide an opportunity for a hearing based on Texas State Code, which requires that each district give individuals an opportunity to comment on the use of the state highway system for bicycle events and department policies that affect bicycle use of the state highway system. So specifically, we want to provide information on bicycle plans, policies, programs, and then in 2018, the state legislature amended part of the transportation code, which requires TxDOT to now hold a public hearing for projects that substantially change the layout or function of a connecting roadway or an existing facility, including the addition of managed lanes, high occupancy vehicles, and specifically for our purposes, bicycle lanes, bus lanes, and transit lanes. So it basically said if we were going to be putting a new bicycle route on a roadway that did not previously have one, that we need to have a public hearing. So it was a little different process for us. So this was our first time to introduce a couple of projects through that process. But previously, we had used these meetings to get comments on our proposed projects that might have an impact on cycling. So we would provide maps that showed where our seal coats were occurring, where our new transportation improvement projects were for a year to 2 years worth of projects. And we gathered information about recreational routes as well, because we used this in our planning at TxDOT to identify corridors that needed shoulders added, or where we should maybe use different materials that were more friendly to cyclists. So this is something that the San Antonio district has been doing pre-me. So pre-2013, they've been collecting data about where recreational routes were and trying to incorporate that into our seal coat program. While this is important in our process, we also wanted to do something different this go round because we couldn't meet in person. So we decided to do something a little different. And the department had recently contracted with MetroQuest, and it allowed us an opportunity to do a survey in addition to the virtual meeting, something we really hadn't done before. So MetroQuest is an online engagement platform that was specifically designed for transportation planning. We were able to provide it in both English and Spanish, and it was open to the public from June 8th to June the 18th, 2021. We provided notice of this survey on our project website. We posted in the newspapers, and we made it part of our public meeting process. So I'm going to just kind of go through so you can see what this survey looks like. And as I do that, I want you to just think about things you might recommend that we could do maybe differently. We're kind of restricted a little bit on format because it's kind of a fill in the blank kind of survey type program. But we're hoping to do this again in June, towards the end of June. So as you'll notice on this slide, it's a welcome page where we want to make sure that, you know, we're recognizing that we're working with AMPO and ARPO in the process. And just for y'all that don't know what ARPO is, that's the Alamo Regional Rural Planning Organization, and it represents our rural counties. So it represents the 11 counties that kind of surround AMPO. All right, so the next slide wanted to find out what are the barriers to biking? What kind of barriers do you have? So this screen asks participants to rank their top 3 barriers to biking. These were common barriers that we had seen used in other studies and things like that. So we just kind of really copied that. And things that I'd heard other people talk about. So each barrier had a description associated. So if I were to click on the bad driver behavior, it would give me kind of what I'm expecting. Most of these were pretty clear as to what they mean. We had a total of 54 responses, and the highest ranked activity was poor pavement and bad driver behavior. And the one that received the least amount of comments was no bike parking, even though I hear that on a regular basis. Individuals could also provide comments about this page or provide additional information they deemed relevant. One comment about riding on the road because there is no designated space. They commented that the biggest, that trucks and cars drive too close. So I see that, you know, partly as an opportunity to continue to spread the word about the 3-foot rule. The next slide was more of a where do you ride? So this kind of took the place of our ability to do a map in person, but we hoped we would get some good information this way as well. So this screen, again, asks participants to drop and drag at least 3 markers on the map. So the marker types provided were starting point. So where do you start your ride? Where are you going? That destination. Do you consider that a recreational route? You could put intersection concerns, vehicles turning right, discontinuous bike lanes, bike box opportunities, illumination concerns, vertical separation, signal timing, and other things fall under those intersection concerns. You could identify locations where there are barriers, there's not a facility to ride on, the speed limit's too high, the pavement conditions are poor, parking issues, poor lighting, railroad tracks. Other things, you could identify network gaps. And then there was an other. So you could actually put a comment in there and explain what that situation was. And this just kind of shows you what that looks like. So you grab your starting point and you drag it down to where you want it to go. And it says connect and provide the roadway if able. So if you needed to be more specific about the location, you could do that in the comment box. And let's see. So this is just kind of what some of the comments look like. And the final map, there were a total of 116 markers were placed on the map, and we received 38 comments. 26 intersection concerns were identified. 28 bike barriers were identified. And a lot of this was a lack of facilities, pavement conditions, and railroad tracks. I kind of mentioned that. 9 network gaps were identified, and a total of 13 additional comments were shared. Many of the rural comments received were that some of the corridors were dangerous because they had no shoulders, while the majority of the urban complaints were associated with better connections with the trail system. Not just in San Antonio, but also some comments associated with Cibolo and Schertz trail systems. We wanted to find out, so this fourth page was, we wanted to find out what is the preferred bike accommodation on different types of roads. So we provided 3 types of facilities to choose from. We looked at, we looked at frontage roads, and there we provided 3 types of facilities. So we asked if people preferred a wide shoulder, a shared use path, or a buffered bike lane. And in most cases, the majority of respondents chose that shared use path. The next opportunity was to look at our 2-lane rural roadways. And here we asked them to choose between a wide shoulder and a shared use path. And I'm sure most of you could figure this one out. 47% liked the wide shoulder, but 53% liked the idea of a shared use path instead. So this final one was, what would your preference be on an undivided urban corridor? And we gave them 4 options to choose from. So there was the shoulder option, a shared use path option, a buffered bike lane option, and then a protected bike lane. So the choice of a shoulder, so once again, the shared use path took 39% of the vote, but the protected bike lane was right behind it with 28%. So these types of conversations that weren't able to have in person, but were able to garner some survey data on, help me talk to my designers that are planning roadway projects and talk about the types of accommodations that we could provide to the cycling community when we're developing our roadways. And I try to get away from calling them accommodations, because I think it should just be part of the infrastructure that we build. We should just automatically think, what are we providing for bikes? What are we providing for pedestrians? What's that safest facility look like? So then finally, there's the thank you for your input, where we ask some demographic questions, age, gender, race and ethnicity, what best represents your household income. This was all optional. You didn't have to answer it. But we but it's good for us to know, who are we reaching, and are there some other ways that we should reach out to people? So all of the respondents were between the age of 25 and 64. We had more male respondents than female, and the vast majority were white, with 25% being a minority ethnicity. More than 50% of the respondents had a household income of less than 100,000, and the majority of respondents categorized their bike rides as recreational. And sometimes I think, because I have a pretty good relationship with some of the recreational groups, that may be why more of the respondents categorize themselves as recreational. And just so you can see, this is a map that shows where most of the people provided their responses were from. And then these were some of the comments. I didn't answer some of the questions because they were not as cut and dry as the author may have thought. I ride all over. The two choices on one of the questions reminded me of two different cyclists that died in both choices, and so forth. And they didn't give any more detail than that. But so people actually commented, and I think we got good comments. It's very hard and unsafe to ride bikes in SA, especially with young children. I think, that's that goal of making the system 8 to 80 for all ages and abilities. Would love more bike trails in New Braunfels. Used to commute by bike, not really an option now. So I don't know if they moved or if a roadway construction happened and it was no longer friendly. Those are some things that you can't sometimes get from your surveys. But, once again, bad driver behavior and road rage discouraged me from riding my bike on streets. So that's the kinds of things that we got out of the survey. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm hoping to do a similar survey in June for our next annual bicycle meeting. And we're working also on 4 district bicycle plans, and San Antonio is going to be one of those bike plans that is going to occur. And so we'll be looking at the whole district of Texas. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And so I hope you guys will stay engaged, and I hope you'll help me spread the word this next time when we do our annual bicycle meeting. And then if you guys have any comments or questions, I'm happy to answer.
Darcy, thanks for your presentation. This is Carl from Tosado Cycling.
Hi, Carl.
I actually have a couple questions. What was that total participation number that you had there?
Oh, you would ask me. Let's see. I think there were over 60, which wasn't a very big number, but that's more than I normally get at the public meeting. So I think, our reach was better than I anticipated.
And that was for San Antonio district.
Right.
So one of the things, the first slide that you had talked about requiring public meetings if there were going to be, changes to the character of the roadway, adding bike lanes or things. And I found myself wondering, obviously there were lots of bond meetings and City of San Antonio meetings about it, but were there text-up meetings about Broadway before the turnback?
So
since that was a TxDOT roadway, as we've all come to learn.
Right. So TxDOT did not do any public meetings that I'm aware of that were associated. This policy was before those conversations started. But this one, we did at this meeting, we did talk about the Alamo Heights project, but we did not talk about the City of San Antonio project.
So there weren't any TxDOT meetings about the addition of bike lanes on that TxDOT roadway?
On the City of Austin the City of San Antonio portion of Broadway. No, there was not.
The TxDOT 368 that runs through San Antonio?
Yes.
Right. Okay. Just curious, I've thought it was interesting that you guys were collecting data on shared use paths. Does TxDOT fund shared use paths?
Yes, we do. So, and
How
this may
many?
be a
Sorry, go
few,
ahead.
this may be a future presentation. So we have a new bicycle guideline policy that we're being encouraged to use. So a lot of our new projects hopefully will be implementing shared use paths on them, so wider sidewalks. We have a project on 2252 that will have shared use paths. I believe I'm going to get them wrong because I just right off the top of my head, we're looking at this. I wish we had looked at shared use paths along the whole 1604 corridor, but it was before the policy was there. So we're looking at the newer segment. So the segment that goes from Redland Road to I-35 could possibly, where we have right of way, have the wider sidewalks or shared use path. We are building a portion on 1604 by I-10 and Valero and UTSA as a shared use path. We built shared use paths on Spur 53, which is University. So there are a number of locations where we've done the shared use paths, where right away and where the local governments that we worked with, that's the type of facility that they encouraged us to use.
Perfect. Thank you. I wanted to just point out that there is a 3-foot, vulnerable road user ordinance in San Antonio, in the city of San Antonio, but that's not it's
not a statewide
law that exists in all of the TxDOT San Antonio area. Just so that everybody's aware of that.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Darcy, this is JD. I just wanted to have a comment that we had run a survey probably a little bit after you, but it was, around bike sharing in particular, but we did talk a lot about the same questions of why wouldn't, barriers to biking and things like that, and I thought it was really interesting. Our age group was a little bit younger, and it was female, was our highest. It was predominantly female, and it was predominantly, I think the equity across race was a little bit more, and ours ranged from like 23 to 46 was kind of our average. But it definitely supported the same thing, that the barriers was they wanted safe places to ride, and having that shared use path and protected bike lanes was by far all the way across the entire survey. Even on questions that didn't really relate to it in the comment sections, they still put it in there. But I thought that was, we were hitting maybe a little bit different demographics, but the message was still the same.
Yeah. And I know, our challenge at the Texas Department of Transportation is having enough right of way to redo a lot of these existing roads that are in place. And so that will continue to be a challenge when we're buying right of way and expanding right of way. It's a lot easier for us to make sure we have the safest facility type.
Right.
Are there any other questions for Darcy?
Hi, Darcy. It's David from Activate SA. How's it going? I had, to your point and question and very reasonable statement about a lack of right-of-way for the most safe type of infrastructure. Does TxDOT have any type of policy allowing for a multi-use path or trail that is off of the main section of right-of-way that would, say, run parallel to it, maybe a discontiguous section allowing for the same level of connectivity without using the limited right-of-way that TxDOT has in a lot of roads? I know that most of the time, we do a roadway project, you build the path next to the roadway, but is there any type of funding policy allowing TxDOT to separate those two facilities into two different sections of right-of-way?
So, I don't know that there's any policy against it. I'm not aware of where we've done that. Does that make sense? Most of the time, the right of way is contiguous. So, I know up in Austin, the RMA has done a lot of separated bike paths along the toll roads. But I think the right of way is still contiguous, so it's still within that right of way footprint, rather than purchasing separate adjacent right of way.
Absolutely. And Dorothy, your initial response, which was there's not a policy against it, is exactly why I asked you the question. So
Okay.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Any more questions from those present or those online? Darcy, thank you. It was a very enjoyable presentation, and I'm glad to see TxDOT is doing that. Okay, if there's no more questions, we're going to move on to agenda item 7, which is the Alamo area bike month activities. Joey, and my goal is always try to just get it out here before 4:30, but it looks like maybe 5.
I'll go as fast as I can, or not too fast though, of course.
As long as you communicate the information, Joey.
Sounds great. And all this information I've already shared in the past, so that helps.
And I haven't forgotten you. Do you want to make an announcement?
Perfect. All right, folks. So once again, I've been talking about Bike Month for the past couple meetings now, and or I guess most recently, talked about Bike Month at the last meeting. I want to give you an overview on this again, especially as Bike Month is next month during the month of May. So just give you some updates on some more events we've been made aware of, the Bike Month Challenge, the Passport, the Bike Passport, Bike to Work Day, Street Skills classes, and more details about Bike Month. So we've added we've added more events to our list here. We're looking to hopefully add this. We will be adding this to our Bike Month calendar, our Bike Month website. So we have a selection of events here from Mpo hosted initiatives such as the Bike Month Challenge, the Bike Passport, to Bike Renewal School Day, which is a national event. There's New Braunfels is having some events, the BMX Bike and Skate Clinic, mountain biking clinic, there's Sunday snail rides. I'm sorry?
May 13th, bike prom. I want to see these pictures.
So there is a bike prom on May 13th, and Bike to Work Week from May 16th through 20th, so it takes place the entire week, so definitely a good time to encourage folks to bike to work. And then we have Bike to Work Day on May 20th. It's one of the events that we focus on. I'll be talking about more in a minute. And then, of course, every Tuesday we have the SATX Social Ride that takes place in San Antonio. And also, I think, I also almost missed the Ride of Silence on May 18th. I think that's a very interesting ride. Not just interesting, but solemn ride, and very important ride too to pay respects to the cyclists who've been killed in crashes or who have been seriously injured. So I think it's a very interesting, very important event that's being held. From what I know, that there's only one that happens in San Antonio. I'm not sure if there's any others that happen throughout the city area, but I think it's definitely one to check out as well. And these are events as of today. So if you have any events, I think I saw Jeff added one in the comment box there. Please send this to us. We also have an event submission portal on our Bike Month website. So please send us those details on our portal so we can get all those details.
Joey.
Yes.
A question about the next Bike to Work Day planning meeting. It seems like I always get the notification of the meeting only a day before. So do you have any sense of when the next one will be?
We haven't scheduled the next one, definitely before the end of the month, but we'll be sending that information out. I don't have a date as of today.
Did you want me to translate what Lauren said, Joey? Give her more than a day's notice.
We have been alerting folks at every ATAC meeting of those meeting notices though as well.
Joey, I had one question. Snail?
Yes, that's one of the New Braunfels events. I think it's the Sunday Snail Ride. It's an event hosted in New Braunfels. I haven't been on one of those yet.
Just curious what that meant.
I guess, Lauren, since you're on there, is that like a social ride, or is that like a recreational, like, long-distance ride?
Yeah, that's not just in the month of May, but we want to call attention to it during May. So it's, you know, the reason it's called the Snail is because riders like me who are just getting started and sometimes don't even feel confident on a road, they accommodate individuals like that. And they say that their pace is the pace of the slowest rider. So if you want to learn more, I've sent that information to Joey, and it should be listed on the platform where you can see all of the events.
Thanks. And so, yeah, as I mentioned, we hadn't scheduled a meeting yet for this month. We typically had released that information at previous ATAC meetings, but we'll get that scheduled as soon as possible. We've been focusing on our Mobility 2050 preparation recently, though. So I'll get that information about the next partner meeting as soon as possible. So just, again, making y'all aware of the Bike Month Challenge. So once again, we'll have more details released about this on our website soon. But it's something we've done, I think, way back into the days of our walk and roll days. Essentially, log any bike trip that can be recreational as well. So definitely encourage folks to give bike commuting a shot, but log any bike trip and have a chance to win prizes and gift cards. So definitely a good opportunity. I can't participate because I'm an Mpo employee, but definitely encourage you to log your trips in the Alamo Commutes app. And if you use one of the ride tracking apps like Strava, Map My Ride, you can easily sync your trips through there. So yeah, go ahead and give that a shot. Our bike passport, Eric, our somewhat new transportation planner focusing on Alamo commutes, so we're working on this initiative. We're doing a test run in the San Antonio area. I believe Eric's been working some with JD and B-Cycle and some of their partners. But essentially, you're going to visit different businesses in the area. We're looking at businesses in areas that are along roads that are somewhat a little more bike-friendly roads. But that would be a great opportunity to go support some local businesses and take part. Cool effort to see what places you can visit during Bike Month on your bike. So I know Eric is finalizing those details, but we've got some businesses such as Baker Lorraine, The Good Kind, and Squeezer's Juice Bar secured as participants. So more details about that soon. And then, of course, Bike's Workday is on May 20th. We'll be having energy stations around their study area. We do have 3 stations noted so far. If you're still interested in hosting a station, our technical deadline already passed, but if you're looking to have a station and can set it up, we'd love to know about where your station's at. If you have questions about where to host a station, please contact me and I'll work with you on that. But once again, our energy stations typically set up along an area that's also somewhat bike-friendly or bicyclist-friendly. We don't want to set up a road or energy station along like frontage road or anything. So these are generally in places where it is generally accessible and somewhat safe to bike along. And so typically have some food, some cool freebies, some giveaway items, and we also have a survey that same day. You participate in that survey, we have some prizes for that as well. And so as of this moment, we have 3 stations noted. There's one in New Braunfels at DOS Rec. There's one here at the MPO, and there will be one over at Alamo Architects, just southwest of our office. So once again, if you're interested in participating in Bike to Work Day and hosting an energy station, please let me know, or give me an email, or shoot me an email, or call me, and we'll figure something out. And so far, I only have 2 classes scheduled for street skills during the month of May. We'll have 2 in New Braunfels. Pending schedule availability, we can schedule more. Probably have 1 here at the office. But let us know, we can try to work something out. And as I mentioned too, there's the option to schedule a street skills class at an employer, at a company, and focusing on helping those folks at the company, you know, feeling safer on a bike, and maybe they can bike to work during bike to work week or bike to work day. And so, of course, check out our website. There's some stuff we're still updating our website, and hopefully we'll get updated within the next week. So bear with us. We're getting this all updated. As I mentioned, we're also working on about to push out our public input for our Mobility 2050 plan. So we've got lots of things going on, but we're really excited about Bike Month again this year, and hopefully we'll have a great, exciting Bike Month once again. So does anybody have any questions? As I mentioned earlier, next Bike Month partner meeting, I haven't scheduled that yet, but I will send that email out to folks in advance. Anybody have any other questions?
Okay, let's go to move to agenda item 8. And let me just reiterate something that you and I talked about earlier, Joey. There will not be an ATAC meeting in the month of May.
Not a regular ATAC meeting where
because of the bicycle activities.
We're scheduled to have a walk and bike night on May 11th at 6 p.m. We'll send out more details on that. So that'll be a regular meeting time. There will be no action taken at that meeting.
Okay. At this time, I'm going to go around the room, and then we'll go online for anybody that's got announcements. And I don't have any other than what I said. David, Lydia?
I just want to remind everyone about the Texas Trails and Active Transportation Conference. That's April 27th and 29th. You can either participate in person or virtually. And if many of the sessions, you can get a professional CEU. And there's still time to register. It's $368.99. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you there.
April still is National Walking Month. Watching opportunities throughout the city for travel connections from communities into Salado or Valero or the Mission reaches. So there's lots of opportunities. Just encourage people to go out and be safe.
Thank you, Bert. Bill?
I just wanted to announce, starting in May, right in time for Bike Month, we will be part of what is called the Transit app, which VIA uses. So on the Transit app, you will be able to see the VIA routes and the B-cycle routes, and you'll be able to buy passes and check out bikes through the Transit app, as well as the B-cycle app still exists, but this will be a new thing. So we will be doing some announcements and some other things, Joey, I'll get with you on, with VIA in transit during the month of May. So I'm very excited about that.
Thank you. Before we go online, David, do you have any announcements? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Joey. Now we'll go online.
Yes. So just a couple announcements here as well from the MPO. As for ATAC, as we mentioned at the June meeting, we'll have that election for the open co-chair position. So that'll be on your June meeting agenda. And also, as I mentioned, be on the lookout for email from us and details about our public input sessions for our Mobility 2050. So I mentioned that earlier. So I mentioned details about that earlier. So please be on the lookout about that. So we talked about our studies and plans. That's also a great opportunity to provide inputs about active transportation infrastructure and programs in our region. So we'd love to get your input on that. And yeah, I think that's it for me. Well, does anybody online have any announcements to share?
Yeah, this is Jessica Brunson here. Just letting you know that Jacob Floyd and Deborah Gonzalez will be the takeover for my position here for Alamo MPO, or the ATAC, and this will be my last meeting in the city of San Antonio. And also, if you are attending As mentioned, thank you, Joey, for putting it up. Bike prom, if you are attending, I'll send out a flyer so you all can know more details when that is to come for Bike Month. And then if anything else, anybody who's taken over any kind of programs or initiatives here on the fun side of all the active transportation, you have my email, or they will have my email, and I will also send it to Joey as well. Thanks.
Okay. Does anybody else have any announcements? Online?
I don't have any announcements.
All right, with that said, we'll move to adjourn the meeting here at 4:40. Thank everybody, and we'll see you in June.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Take care.
Jacob will now see you in the record, right?